Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to this first of a series of AMIS Pro tutorials. In this tutorial, I will try and explain you the entire workflow. So that is really how to set up a batch, how to fill the batch, how to prepare it for your printing, and then actually exporting it or slicing it. That's quite a bit of information, of course, and that's why we leave out all the specials like adding lattices and shelling or batch recovery systems, etc. So we're leaving that for some other shorter tutorials. In this one, let's try and just go through this very easy workflow within AMIS Pro. As you know, AMIS Pro is build preparation software specifically intended for binder jetting, material jetting, SLS technology, and MJF technology. That's what we're focusing on here. So let's take it away. Let's just immediately try and create a full batch. That's just by, of course, clicking this one to start. You immediately notice your batch view here. This is where we actually start. Of course, I can zoom in, zoom out, and I can configure that batch in the configuration section. That's a bit of an exception, the configuration, because the rest of the UI of the user interface is really set up that you work from left to right as you go from setting up the batch to slicing or exporting the batch, so you can actually go on with the printing. That's the logic to go from left to right, but at any point, at any given point, you can just return and let's say add more parts, renest, etc. You will notice, by the way, that probably you will see that your own workflow as you prepare batches might change as the nesting within AMIS Pro is apologies, very fast and very dense. So that gives you some options to actually change how you work. Good. Apart from that, well, here in the setup, I can create another one, but that's basically the same thing as what I just did. So let's not go there at the moment. You can save at any time. The saving here will save not only what's inside your batch, but also all the parts that are not fitting into it. The in place and the recover, that's something we will discuss in later tutorials. And you can also reset your view. Imagine you're somewhere in your batch and you can't really see where you are. Just tap this one, or else the shortcut, which is Alt 0 on a Mac. There are, of course, similar shortcuts foreseen, and you can resize your batch, which is what you're going to do after you would have reconfigured your printer settings. So your printer size, then you need to press here resize in order to make that happen. Good. Well, we move on, as said, from left to right. So we go to the parts section and let's import some parts. Here you see a bit of step files, 3MF and STL files, which is basically not an issue for AMIS Pro. So let's import those, and that takes just a few seconds. Then let's see, this one is probably too big, so you can easily just delete parts here, just as this one here. And then as indicated, you can just as well import more parts by again clicking there and getting in another batch of parts. Here you see that one of the imports failed. Of course, we do have a check when importing parts, and in case that's possible, then they will actually be healed. But in some cases, like here, when you got a file without any triangles, it was put there on purpose, then it will just signal you that there is something wrong there, and that you might have to do some extra work on your CAD program to basically repair that file. So here I will just accept, and it keeps on importing the other parts then afterwards. They're all nicely stacked here in front of the batch, and well, in my case, of course, that's a choice you can make. I always like immediately to do a quick nesting just to have a better overview of what is all in there. Right, back to the parts section. This is everything we want to print, and then it's a matter of course, of working on your individual parts. When you click a part, you will here see the part properties, and when you double click on the part, you will actually see a detailed view of that part. So then in the part properties, you can change rotation of the parts, you can alter the scaling, you can foresee a part specific nesting gap, meaning there is a generic nesting gap. We'll come back to that later. But you can also increase or decrease the nesting gap for specific parts, for example, if they're a bit bulky. Okay, and then the number of copies. Let's say here we need 10 copies of this part. Okay, on to the next part, and this is basically how you go on throughout your parts. Let's say I want to rotate this one up like that, and I need 10 parts. Here, well, that's kind of the same. And this one, let's say we need 5 copies, and I also want to put that up like that. This is a very bulky part. We will later on explain how you can do shelling and lattices with this kind of parts in one of the next tutorials. But for now, let's leave it as it is. And this one might also want to put up, of course. I'll put 200 parts here. And let's see, maybe we can put of this one another 150 copies. Just making a bit of a guess here. And in order to try and get a full batch, let's put another 100 of those. And why not 10 of those? Good. Okay, so you went through all your parts, you arranged the quantities, the positions, and the rotations, and then that means you can basically go on to the nesting. We do still have a section view here, so you can go through your parts if you want to. It normally starts halfway the part when you click it the first time, and so you can see throughout your parts. Also here you got the reset view button in case that's handy. Like for example, like this. Let's move to the nesting part. There we are. Okay, now all these copies that I gave in are actually positioned in front of the batch. So now let's see if that actually fits inside. This is the nesting solution within AMIS, and you will notice that it's extremely fast and extremely dense. Here we took like what 6 or 8 seconds, I don't know, to get a nesting density of 22% inside the build box. A couple of parts didn't fit and are sorted then here, so you can immediately see what didn't fit in this build box. Now, there are, of course, quite a few cases, I think, whereby you might find this nesting density way too high. And then, of course, well, the easy part here is that you can just quickly increase your gap distance in order to decrease the nesting density. Since nesting is so fast, this isn't an option. By the way, in the version 2.5, which will be out in just a month from now, and that's half of February 2025, there will be a nesting to percentage possibility, so you won't have to go through this anymore. Anyway, I just increased the gap distance. We got a lower density, which is obviously what you would expect there. By the way, you can just as well clear the parts. So in other words, throw them all out again. You have boxing options and unboxing options for the parts, but that will be part of a later tutorial as well. Good. So let's assume we're happy with this batch. So we will then move on to the next part, which is the slicing. Right. In the slicing, and now this part will kind of a bit depend on what kind of printer you have. You do have options to really go for slices and set a certain thickness of each layer, of course, in micrometer, that is. You will have the possibility to actually tell to the printer what type of pixel, and well, you will normally know then which pixel width and depth you will need for that specific printer, and then you can output that either as TIFF or as an SVG file. Now, in many other cases, that hassle, if it's a hassle at all, wouldn't even be needed. You can just go to the export button, which will basically save your entire batch but the batch only, not what's around the batch, as a 3MF file, which can then be imported into the software of the printer or directly into the printer. So this part depends a bit on what type of printer you have. Anyway, also here in this case, it's really just a matter of clicking here the slicing, the or the exporting, and you can go through quite quickly. In the preview, and it starts also halfway, you can still have a run through all your parts to have a look at how it looks inside there. By the way, you probably have noticed that we do not have any checks embedded for what is it, parts that are yeah perhaps yeah inside each other or things like that. It's actually not possible. The algorithm that AMIS is using doesn't allow for any encapsulated parts or for any parts that are interlocking or things like that. So there is no need for that in the AMIS Pro software. Quickly, perhaps still a small thing about the configuration options, which I already mentioned. You can, of course, put in your license here. You can change your printer settings here, and then just save. And don't forget afterwards to actually reset your printer so that the size is indeed adapted to the new printer settings. And there are a few settings with regard to the part manipulation. Rotating the parts can be done through these fields in the parts section, but you can also manipulate your parts by actually just pressing the Alt buttons with X, Y, Z in order to manipulate them 15 degrees in this case at a time, going up or down. Um, and this one you can make a standard. We noticed that quite a few people prefer this 15-degree angle, but you can just as well make it 45 or 90 degrees or whatever angle suits you. The nesting distances you can also set here if you prefer 4 millimeter as a standard or 5 millimeter. And then the distances from the side you can also change here that you can tell the system what distance to keep there. So that's basically it. That's this configuration settings you have and you will need at this point. And then, in other words, your batch is ready and you can restart all over again. More tips and tricks in the next tutorials, so definitely have a look. It will help you a lot in making good use of the AMIS Pro software. Thanks for watching. We'll be in touch. Bye.